If I were to ask you which part of you, or which talent or ability that you possess, helps you out the most in your life, what would you say? What element in you is most important? Now, I think that's a pretty interesting question. It's worth asking, at least as an exercise, right? So ask yourself, what do you think it is? Is it your intelligence? Is it some unique talent you possess? How about your attractiveness or your education? Maybe it's your personality. Or is it your experience? Is it your work ethic and grit, right? Perhaps it's your ideas or even your belief system. Perhaps it's your moral code. Maybe it's just your dumb luck. But what do you think is the primary shaper of you and therefore of your life? Because somewhere inside you there is an element, and I believe a commonly forgotten element, that may just be the most important asset you possess. It is constantly influencing and shaping every single thing about your life. And I call this element the forgotten element because I honestly don't ever hear people talking about it, at least not directly. Okay? Everyone is out there working very hard in their lives and in so many ways, but rarely on this. However, the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced that it is of primary importance. Primary as in it comes first. And of course, it's none of the things that I just mentioned that wouldn't be any fun. And of course, all of that stuff affects your life, right? All of it has an influence and perhaps even a profound influence. But without the forgotten element, all of those other assets, they all lose their mojo, right? Or even their meaning. Okay? So, the forgotten element, simply put, is your consciousness. Now, I'm aware that using a word like consciousness might sound a bit like a woo-woo life coach guy, right? But stick with me for a minute. Consciousness is simply defined as a state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. So of course it matters if you're awake or not, but it's not as simple as on or off, is it? Right? It's more of a measurement of degree or of amount. So it's not just are you awake, but it's how awake and aware are you? So while consciousness is a big word and a big subject with lots of stuff that we could discuss, it really all just comes down to simple awareness. But to become aware, you first have to make your awareness available. And this is the part about consciousness that I think often goes forgotten. So the question really becomes this: how available are you to take in or receive the world around you, or reality, whatever, at any given moment? Because if you're not available to really look, well, then you're not available to really see. And then think about it. What good are any of those other gifts if they're applied blindly? I mean, how do you even know how or when or where or why to use your other gifts if you can't even accurately perceive what surrounds you or what's inside you? And we all know that so often we're so clouded or distracted or consumed by something, like maybe our phones or our pain or maybe even our goals, that we walk right past our deeper opportunities. We squander our other assets. Or worse, we use our considerable powers in ways that are accidentally destructive. Think about your intelligence. People often mistake intelligence for consciousness, but they're different. You might have a great computer up there, but we all know that feeding even the best computer with limited or bad information will not give you much of a usable answer. Or it will straight up give you the wrong answer, right? Nonsense in equals nonsense out, as the saying kind of goes. It goes something like that. But in my experience, intelligence without awareness, without consciousness, without availability, doesn't actually get you where you want to go. You end up burning yourself out trying to force your computer to calculate all the impossible math of the wrong problem using the wrong information. However, the right input delivered clearly to even a slow computer will eventually produce the answer. That's the difference of consciousness. What about in love? Does it really matter what gifts someone possesses if they don't ever take a moment to truly see you or to truly be with you. I mean, what is love? Is it just being impressed with somebody's assets? Or is it really the shared act of making yourselves available to one another, of making your gifts available to one another? Right? There's no question that your other gifts help attract people to you, but they do not have the power in and of themselves to create or especially to maintain love. So if you enter a relationship thinking that your job is just to have impressive traits for the rest of your life, and that it's really not about showing up with your attention, well, good luck with that. There's a famous Teddy Roosevelt quote that my wife reminded me of the other day when we were talking about this. And it says, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. I think that kind of sums up what I'm getting at a little bit here. Or let's just forget about love for a moment, okay? You can ask yourself this question. If you could actually see the joy and the pain that you bring to other people each day, I mean, really become aware of all the little ways that you are affecting the world around you. Maybe through your choices, or maybe just your tone of voice, or your choice of words, or your body language, or maybe just what you choose to make important, right? If you really saw how all that was being received, would that have an effect on the way you act? Would it change what you do and therefore what happens? Because I know that so often in my own life, I might say something that unintentionally hurts someone. Or maybe it's just the fact that I'm distracted by something while I'm in their presence, right? And that affects them as well. And I don't find out about that until much later. And I wish I would have known, because then I could have done something to fix the situation, right? And maybe they don't say anything. And maybe there's no immediate sign that's impossible for me to miss, right? To tell me. But if I was really just present, if I was really just conscious, I would have seen it. Or they would have taken a moment to tell me because they saw I was actually available to receive it. And I'm not just talking about causing people pain. I mean, what if you're unaware that there's something that you do that really brings someone a lot of comfort or joy? I mean, how many of these types of exchanges, right? The painful ones, the joyful ones, are being missed every day. And if you knew, wouldn't that change some of your choices? It's just consciousness. It's just availability. And it's not only just with people, it's with everything. I mean, if you could see the eventual outcomes of your efforts, right? What will be successful? What efforts will fail? What was helpful? What hurt? What did you miss last time? What did you do wrong? You know, wouldn't that lead you to make some different choices, right? Now, of course, we can't predict the future, but we can be more available to see the patterns at play. We can be available to more of the information about our own situations than we currently are, right? And some of the answers that we're busy seeking might just be sitting right in front of us in plain sight. So instead of repeating obvious mistakes, we can instead at least go try something different. Again, it's just consciousness. In fact, all of these distinctions that I'm talking about, whether it be intelligence or love or communication, whatever, you know, your relationship with reality, it doesn't matter. They all start from a consideration and a measurement of consciousness, of how much awareness and awakeness is being applied. Though I don't think we often think in those terms, but what else could it be? Okay, one thing I want to throw in here before we get too much further is that awareness or consciousness might sound like it's a question of searching for and collecting the right pieces of information, right? About being woke, right? To some particular viewpoint, right? But that's not consciousness either. That's a certain kind of focus. And focus, by definition, is the narrowing of consciousness down to one thing at the expense of everything else. And of course, that can be useful too sometimes. But the reason I'm talking more about availability than information is because the information that you can effectively collect is actually pretty limited. I mean, does anyone ever have all of the information? No, right? So it's limited by design. And also information is always changing. And this goes for you as well. You are limited by design and you are always changing, right? Fair enough? There's a great quote that says, "A man never steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river and he is not the same man." Right? That's just saying everything is always changing, and it's the same with information. So it can be dangerous treating a piece of information or even your relationship with that information as a solid, reliable thing. It's a far more effective strategy to just make yourself available, to watch information flow like the river, okay? Without holding on to any piece of it too tightly. Does that make sense? So consciousness, as I'm talking about it, is not a question of intelligence or talent or information. It's simply a question of availability, of openness, of willingness. It's less about what you are, what you do, what you possess, and more about how, right? How you are, how you do, how you possess. It's not your whatness, it's your howness that is primary, okay? All right, but here's what I think the best thing is about thinking in terms of howness instead of whatness, okay? What could life be like if it was less about your whatness, your talents, your possessions, your position, whatever, and instead more about your howness, about how willing and available you are in whatever you're doing, right? Now that may not be how it looks out there in the world, right? There's a lot of what being advertised out there. I get it. But I believe that in real life, when all the BS gets washed away, how is what we're all really responding to, right? Just so I explained earlier with love, right? And I love this idea because how we are is something that we can all work on regardless of what we are, okay? So, of all the ways you spend your time assessing yourself and investing in yourself, your looks or your education or, hey, your opinions, right? How often do you consider your consciousness? Your simple, humble availability. Is it fair to call it the forgotten element? Have you ever even thought in terms of consciousness? I mean, fair enough, that's not maybe a really normal thing to do, but it can't hurt to ask yourself, how available are you? What has your attention? What are you not seeing around you? Or what are you not seeing within you? Right? And what's stopping you from being more aware? That'd be good to know. Or how much ownership of your attention have you given away? Are you even conscious of how much of it you've given away? And these questions aren't just philosophical, they're deeply practical. Consciousness changes what you see. It also changes how you see. So it changes how you respond, and therefore how the world responds to you in return. I believe that if you really take time to explore this whole consciousness thing, that you will find that your consciousness sits at the beginning and the end of everything. Okay? So perhaps it's worth taking an extra moment to become more conscious of your consciousness.